I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Prahat Kumar. Sir, please come and give it.
So first of all, thank you very much in the department, Central University of Hyderabad. आशुतोष को धन्यवाद, गजेंद्र जी को धन्यवाद और रविकांत जी। So today I am going to speak about what I have titled Hindi Nationalist Sensorium in Late Colonial India. So as the session's title is औपनिवेशिक प्रतिबंध, तो औपनिवेशिक यहाँ टेम्पोरल सेंस में है सिर्फ, शायद उससे ज़्यादा भी, लेकिन अभी आप इसको टेम्पोरल सेंस में माने, समय के हिसाब से। तो सेंसोरियम का मतलब है यहाँ सेंसर और सेंसोरियम। So basically what I mean to say is that various acts and processes of aesthetic judgment that we reach or certain men in most of the cases reach towards censoring and prescribing what they call inappropriate literature, which can potentially provoke and cause sensory incitement among the anonymous readers or viewers. So first of all, I'll start with some general remark to set the context. As you all know from the basic textbooks on nationalism, that nationalism is also, and many other things, is about creating and consolidating a moral, felt or imagined community. So its public proponents, the nationalists, leading men, as it happened in India, also sought to define and mandate moral values and cultural habits appropriate for the members of this nation. So throughout the journals and other public forum in Hindi public sphere, these public men usually addressed various actual and potential constituents of their own Hindi or Indian nation with strong moral charge when they prescribed or prescribed what to do, what not to do, what to eat, what not to eat, what to wear, what not to wear, what to read, see, listen and play, and so forth. So for example, during the high tide of nationalism in late colonial India, you can see a series of examples, I'll show in the form of cartoon here, and that the nationalism is mandating how not to organize or how one should organize alternatively one's daily life. So in this particular slide you see this is about the daily life of an educated girl from college going girl from an affluent family. So as you can probably see that it's 7 o'clock in the morning, she's busy in the bathroom, and then in the next 2 hours she's dressing her hair, doing makeup before going to college. Afterwards she goes for evening drive, listens to radio, gramophone, and above all she ends her life, she ends her daily, that particular day or every day, reading a novel. She has no time in the end, as the last slide shows, or the last frame shows, to do the national work, charkha. There is a big question mark. Similarly, so it's not only so the hostel boys in the time of nationalism. Rashtra Chintan kab kare? Because when to do or meditate about the national question. So the young university student living in a hostel, he kills his day from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the night in sipping tea, doing shaving, makeup, playing cards with his friends, lawn tennis, watching films, playing harmonium, all bad things as Ravikant indicated about harmonium, and applying whitening cream on his face before going to bed. So, of course, he has no time to meditate on the national problem in question. So these cartoons reflect the nationalist assertion of moral authority and desire to discipline and regulate work and leisure time of its various constituents. It sets up a broad context to enter into the heart of our subject matter. It throws some important clues to understand the widespread nationalist suspicion of entertainment literature, which arguably had immense power and effective vitality, overpowering readers' senses and social sensibility, leading to debilitating, weakening, corrupting moral social effects. And this can be elaborated through the enduring image or this kind of image. I have given 3 examples satirizing a young educated woman engrossed in reading novel at the expense of her other essential duties. उसे बच्चे के लिए टाइम नहीं है, घर का काम करना नहीं सुहाता, वो किताब सुन रही है, तीसरी वाली किताब पढ़ रही है और ग्रामोफोन और रेडियो सुन रही है और बच्चा रो रहा है. So in fact, one can speak much more on the troubled relationship of Hindi nationalism with novels. Symptomatically reflected here in this first, in the famous 1903 cartoon published in Saraswati, drawn on the instruction of none other than the great Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi himself. Novel is represented here as a juggler magician, जादूगर, वो जो बंदर वाला नाच दिखाता है, मदारी. Perhaps, and that how the intent is to also show that how it occupies central place in the imagined literary conference, much to the dislike of Dwivedi, the great editor patriarch of modern Hindi. Be that as it may, the figure of novel as the most enchanting and effective form of literature, unleashing effective energy over various social bodies, was the subject of mild anxiety, as I showed in these cartoons, and it remains so throughout late colonial India. What made the situation even worse, alarming, and demanded nationalist intervention, censorious intervention, was when the novelistic prose contained socially, sexually daring thematic content. So to substantiate this, I shall further dwell on some relatively well-known archival examples and familiarize well-known evangelized moments which debated the moral, literary, aesthetic quality of what in Hindi nationalist circle was then called vulgar or inflammatory literature, asli ghasleti sahitya, printed literary visual objects, and their bad power or ominous power onto the mass of readers. Participants in this debate, of course, and needless to repeat, were all claiming to be nationalists and were actually nationalists, but with varying ideological positions around the question of censorship in literature. So when I say Ghasliti is a term given by Banarsidas Chaturvedi. If you do not know, those who do not know about the basic facts of 1928-29 Ghasliti Sahitya controversy, so this is the summary that you can read. Pandit Banarsidas Chaturvedi began to edit a new periodical called Vishal Bharat, Greater India, which was published from the press of the then press baron, just like today's AVP group, you can say. Ramanand Chatterjee, who was also a Hindu Mahasabha leader in 1928. From the second number onwards, I may be wrong, it might be third number onwards, he led a very systematic and sensational campaign against Ghasliti Sahitya, or what he called Ghasliti Sahitya. He managed to manipulate and publish Mahatma Gandhi's short note endorsing his cause. Why I say manipulative is that Gandhi did not read it, but he trusted Chaturvedi on his instruction about that particular note that he sought from Gandhi. Later on, Gandhi said there is nothing inflammatory or Ghasliti in the text that you have sent. I have read that particular literature. And he suppressed Gandhi's reply. I mean, the story is well narrated by none other than Ramvilas Sarma. So, what I'm also drawing your attention to is that in the competitive print market, Vishal Bharat began this literary movement targeting commercially successful rival press and periodicals like Matwala for publishing what he said, sexually inciting, sensuous literature on the perils of same-sex love, or you can read pedophilia, written by the best-selling author of the time, Pandey Bechan Sarma Ugr, whose one of the writings you saw in the gallery, which was prescribed by the government. And then after that, it also encompassed another major rival press which published journals like Bhavishya, which also you saw in the exhibition, and Chang, of course, the most famous one, for publishing emotional sexual exploitation of Hindu women in their family, etc. And the stories about them. Chaturvedi projected his activism as nationalist literary campaign to prevent and protect Hindi literature and its reader from the moral emotional deviance caused by such literature in the high time of nationalism. He proved to be a successful entrepreneur, and his literary agitation was debated furiously and passionately, not only in the pages of Vishal Bharat, but also in other journals. Two examples you can see. One is from Lucknow's publication Sudha, and another is from Yuva, published from Patna, which is engaging in that debate, although not agreeing with Vishal Bharat and Banarsidas Chaturvedi. The scholar who have worked on nationalist discomfort, or this phenomena of nationalist discomfort and chastisement of vulgar and obscene literature, have rightly pointed out that the nationalist anxiety and desire to censor thrived on a belief in a lack of autonomous judgment by the lay reader, the emotionally volatile mass. As Charu Gupta, Sumanto Banerjee and others have meticulously shown in their own specific contexts of their work, this is a self-serving patriarchal discourse enunciated by an upper caste Hindi or Bengali Bhadralok or intelligentsia which were swayed by the Victorian moral sexual paradigm. It helped to justify their public cultural authority over the vast majority. I say that all of this is correct, but the problem with this explanation is that it tends to reduce their justification of moral censorship merely as a discourse of elite domination. It falls short of taking notice that the enunciation of regulatory discourse on literature for the nationalist censors as well as its opponents was also to become another way to talk about public affect management. This is what I would say here, that borrowing insights from William Mazzarella's recent, in fact 10-year-old study now on political culture and discourse of film censorship, which is clearly evident from the term sensorium in the title of the talk itself. I shall show some more excerpts, snapshots, vignettes drawn from this controversy, which debated the prescription of entertaining literary print. I shall show how the language of this debate was framed, how was the reader mass classed in the language of caste. Ultimately, what was at stake was the question of the nature and effective power of literature. The effective power of literature was acceptable and laudable as long as it did not exceed nationalist reformist boundaries. After all, the nationalists' claim to sovereignty in the field of literature entailed mediating relationship between sensuous incitement and cultural symbolic order. Let me begin with a couple of examples from cartoons and read out some more excerpts. You can see these three. The first cartoon is hindisahitya. This is hindisahitya. The vendor of hindisahitya, the writer of hindisahitya, is carrying his literature into the hindisahitya somewhere, and you can see how he is projected. So in the first cartoon, hindisahitya is human etc. And its writer is its carrier, a bhangi, a sanitation worker. The nation in cartoon's default representation is educated middle class, the members of Sahitya Sammelan at literary congress, and they are unable to avoid and bear the piercing stench of this gaslit literature. However, unlike the civilized members of the nation, the uncivilized, the barbarous, the primitive ones are thrilled in the second cartoon and are going wild in this. As you can see here, it is Andaman, that the writer of hindisahitya is reaching in the Andaman island. The primitive tribals are the ones who can enjoy this kind of literature. In the third one, depicting the current state of Hindi literature, shows wasteland of Hindi literature marked by mushrooming of gaslit. Therefore, the fragile but aesthetically pleasing literary nightingale is threatened by the ugly toad of gaslit. So, this is an excerpt from Chandragupta Vidyalankar's essay, who contributed into this controversy. Vidyalankar, as we know, was an anti-colonial activist, nationalist educator, Vidyapeeth mein padhate the, argued against gaslit literature's dubious claim to have a reformist agenda. That gaslit literature or its writers always claim that it is for the reformist purposes, in order to expose the hidden social ills and to strengthen the social health of the nation. So what he says, and is highlighted, that those who represent social dirt in attractive literary form should be aware of this dirt's attractive power and effective force among the masses. The drain inspector of the municipal town inspects the state of cleanliness in the city. So do the bhangis deal with human etc. every day. But between the two, there remains essential difference of orientation and attitude. A bhangi cannot keep himself separate from human dirt. What Vidyalankar effectively argued was that the educated folks of the nations were morally, culturally equipped to do the job of cleaning social filth, resisting the effective power of that filth, the stench in this case, to guard his sensory provocations. The subaltern masses, here the bhangi, were under-equipped to save itself from the same cultural shit, and therefore were vulnerable to its incitement, and in fact in their ignorance perhaps enjoyed it. What is unmistakably clear is that whether it is Vidyalankar's essay or Chaturvedi's editorial cartoons, the language of literary purity aligned with the language of caste purity. Such views and articulations, so such views and articulations were shared widely. This can be viewed through the other cartoon, which is there beside Vidyalankar's excerpt. So this was published in a journal, short-lived journal, Bharathendu, published from Allahabad. So you can see here, you can easily notice, the image actually shows the nationalist editor, crusader, Chaturvedi, as the drain inspector, instructing the sanitation worker to sweep and flush the practitioner of caste literature, here the Matwala team, which included Ugra and others, including Nirala, in the drainage of the town. Doing annual self-assessment of his literary crusade, ek saal ke baad, what the editor of Vishal Bharat observed was interesting. Underlining the greediness and moral debauchery of the thick-skinned proponents of Ghaslati literature, he vowed to intensify his agitation by taking the matter away from the enlightened literary public, down to the common people in masses. Only masses, only opposition from the mass, or only mass opposition, arguably would lead to the desired outcome. What was desired was nothing less than pulping out such literature from the library and the bookshop. It was argued then and only then the literary landscape will be cleansed. Interestingly, on the one hand, he invokes the power of commoners in prescribing such literature. On the other hand, he chastises the same people for their laziness and consequent indulgence in cheap pleasure of such literature. Arguably, masses have become lazy and indulgent because of the lack of political fervor in the country's collective life after non-cooperation. So in other words, the nationalist political mobilization directs and channelizes public affect on the desired moral path. And by extension, literary crusade against Ghaslate literature is also trying to do the same. It is about managing public affect for national power. My last illustration is the graphic story about the life of the Ghaslate story. So it's a story about story. How one reads Ghaslate story, what happens when one reads Ghaslate story, how it provokes sensuous incitement, how it leads to moral panic and social anarchy. It was written by Totaram Sanadi, the famous indentured labor-turned-writer and nationalist activist, who was hero of anti-indentured campaign after the First World War. Essentially, the story conveys the following. The Ghaslati Sahitya is in the genre of Indar Sabha or other entertainment literary performative text. It presents itself in the guise of reformative story, that it vividly portrays how lover couple met in heaven after 7 lives of separation, spent sensuous life and voluptuous pleasure, but in the end turned ascetic after listening to the enlightened discourse of legendary 7 sages. Such narratives do have effective aura and transformative power, like say of pious religious texts. But its power is of opposite kind, of an extremely bad and ominous variety. Licentious men narrate these stories to trap women. If a woman reads or listens to the narrative, she is swayed by its power, loses her self-control, transgresses sexual social boundaries. Often she ends up being killed by her illicit lover or her enraged husband. The teller and the sellers of these tales need to be given good amount of thrashing. To one of the visuals says so. To prevent dissemination of this kind of inflammable literature. Maintain moral sanity and order in society. So it also insinuates that it is the rightful duty of the nationalist vanguards to intervene, control and manage the access of intoxicating affect among the volatile and emotionally fragile masses. To conclude, basically I have tried to illustrate the following points. Generally speaking, entertainment print or print as such was a medium of mechanical mass production, we all know. It could be everywhere at the same time, and its effective provocation would always be replayed countlessly in private readings or in the corners of society where there is no nationalist moral or familial patriarchal oversight. Second, that such literature had immense power. It is emphasized all over again, multiple times, 1,000 times. It potentially or actually unleashes unruly effective energy which could cause sensuous incitement and consequent moral degeneration. The sensory metaphor of such literature, having piercing, repulsive, attractive, psychosocial aroma, inflammatory and intoxicating effect, enchanting and engrossing power, was therefore quite common and stark in the nationalist debate that I examined. And third, the language of nationalist sensorium, which chastised gaslighting literature, was deeply soaked in the cultural semantics of caste. Gaslighting literature was said to be nothing more than the filth and dirt of literary wasteland threatening the putative national literary and aesthetic landscape. The writers of such literature were like scavengers dealing with filth, leading members of the civilized nation must sue away such writers and writings. These prints were thought to be perilous for the less enlightened mass of potential readers, and it would be fit, alternatively, only fit for primitive and outcast bodies and so forth. Such literature had the potential to unsettle the sensorial habits of the national people in subtle and unpredictable ways on which the nationalist authority itself rested. The nationalist vanguards wished to shape, mediate, channelize or control the popular sensorial habits for their own anti-colonial or otherwise political purposes. For the nationalist claim to sovereignty, I'll try to show in the written paper that in the field of literature entailed mediating relationship between what I also said in the beginning, the sensuous incitement and cultural symbolic order. So, and finally, the nationalist discourse, in the nationalist discourse, the provocation, you can see, resides neither exclusively in the subject, that is the woman's subaltern reader, nor in the object, the ghassleti narrative, but rather in an emergent relationship between the two. So, in the absence of enlightened supervision, the relationship between the social body of women or the lower caste, lower class people, those who read, or unrefined bodies, the sensuous potential of the novel emerges and unfolds in such a way that something happens to the emotionally fragile women and subaltern readers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prabhat Kumar, for bringing one of the earliest Hindi literature discourse, or I would rather say debate. It was really first experience for me. And I would also like to add, I could not say back then when Jolly sir presented his paper, like it was really interesting to know, Jolly sir, that with those 4 plays you let us know that how the power in Kerala somehow is having same kind of mechanism controlling the marginalized section of society, their expression, whether it is pre-colonial or the post-colonial powers. So it was really insightful paper. Thank you so much.